I'm sure you've seen countless sunsets in your lives, but um, I've always wondered why the hue around the sunset becomes so vividly colorful, starting with red around the sun as it sets. And it's not until I learned physics when I understood that it happens because of a phenomenon that light goes through called scattering. So we all know light travels like a wave, and every wave has bumps. And the distance between two bumps is called wavelength. And a wavelength of a wave is a characteristic that defines or characterizes a kind of a wave. Every color that you see has a different wavelength. So when light starts off from the sun, it carries all the seven colors or all the seven wavelengths uh, together. And when they reach the Earth's atmosphere, they undergo a process called scattering, which is basically the wave of all the wavelengths interacting with the molecules of the atmosphere and spreading as a result of those collisions. And an interesting question might appear in our minds that why um, only a certain color or certain wavelengths are visible when this process is happening. In fact, the color of the sky, which is majorly blue, is because blue having a shorter wavelength or higher frequency undergoes major amount of scattering. That's why it spreads across and is seen in the most amount. Red, however, which is on the other end of the spectrum, having a longer wavelength and lower frequency gets scattered in the least amount. That's why you're only able to see only around the sunset. Don't other colors go through scattering? Yes, they do. Sometimes you will also be able to see some pink, some purplish hue as well. But again, purple or violet and all the other colors are not visible to our eyes because our eyes are designed or are most sensitive to blue and red. Also, during the noon, as you can see, the color of the sun appears yellow because of the same phenomenon as scattering. So many questions arise when we look at the world from the lens of physics, which really tries to explain a phenomena. Like in the same scenario, why then the sky is blue and the clouds are white? It turns out again that scattering happens at different levels and are of different types. Some scattering, in this case that we talked about, called Rayleigh scattering, depends on the wavelength, and some scattering does not depend on the wavelength. So as the size of the particle or the molecule becomes bigger, the scattering of light does not depend on the wavelength. So the cloud consisting of big water molecules, water vapor molecules, um, light interacts with those molecules and scatters irrespective of the wavelength. So all the wavelengths are present in that white color that you're able to see in the cloud. And as you look around, so many other aspects we see, for example, the flight of a bird. Look at the gorgeousness and the elegance of eagle of an eagle flying. And if you understand the physics that is happening there, is it's trying to create lift. Actually, it doesn't try. It's almost effortless. But the aerodynamic design of the wings of a bird allows faster motion of air molecules above and relatively slower motion of air molecules below, creating a pressure gradient, a low pressure zone above and a high pressure zone below, creating a lift, allowing the bird to take off from the land. And at the same time, birds also use their wings to push the air molecules behind to create a thrust forward. As a result of Newton's third law of motion, every action will have an equal and opposite reaction. So when we look at the world through the lens of physics, we really take on an attitude of an observer, a careful observer, and then making careful measurements, and then carrying out analysis, trying to make predictions and a hypothesis, and trying to come up with an explanation of that phenomenon. It involves a certain mindset, curiosity to ask questions, to inquire, and also some skills to use the appropriate terminology and the language, and also to understand and visualize and interpret graphs, which are very convenient for analyzing relationships between quantities and to manipulate mathematical equations. These are the certain set of skills and a mindset that anyone who is aspiring to study physics needs to have.